All right, welcome everybody to Copyright and Access Right with Alex and Ash. I am Jim Fowler. I am the Access Services and Reference Librarian at the library. I want to talk a little bit about an overview of what copyright is to start with. A lot of people don't know that the real purpose behind copyright law was that it was created by Congress and is balanced by copyright holder rights and user exemptions. And then eventually copyright protection is supposed to end, with public domain materials belonging to everyone and to no one. In the U.S. Constitution, it says, the Congress shall have power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited time to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Materials that are produced by the federal government and most state government materials are free of copyright. Creators can dedicate their materials to the public, automatically put it into the public domain and never claim copyright on their work if they choose. Or materials can pass to the public domain when their exemptions and their expiration date is reached. As of 1998, there was an amendment to the Copyright Act, which made the copyright period the creator's life of 70 years. This is a very far cry from the 56 years that was granted in 1909. Works for hire and anonymous works are 95 years from publication, or 125 years from creation, whichever is shorter. So you see these periods become very long now and far outlive people's lifetimes. Generally, any work that is published prior to 1924 is out of copyright. But some works published between 1924 and 64 may be out of copyright for failure to renew. Because in that period, you had to renew copyright once you were going. That is, it's been that way. You don't have to renew it. Materials published out of copyright notice between 1924 and 1977 may be in the public domain if they were published without a copyright notice. Renewal of copyright notices are not required for any item published after 1978. So it's supposed to be a limited statutory period that over time has been lengthened and lengthened and lengthened. There have not been any materials coming out into the public domain recently, and that's why that kind of 1924 date is where it's at right now until there's another revision of the copyright law. Now, not everything can be protected by copyright. You cannot copyright an idea. It has to be original, fixed, creative. So, for example, you can't copyright the idea of reality television. You can't copyright American Idol in a specific fixed format. You cannot copyright the idea of an online course, but you can copyright the specific materials that you put into a particular online course. Also, copyright can be shared in collective works through collaborative participation or under the application of work for hire. So those types of collaborations can change the effect of copyright for a particular item. Additionally, rights can be transferred in writing to the signature of the party transferring the rights. For example, if you publish an article in a journal, a lot of times you're signing a piece of paper to the publisher, you're signing an article and giving them the copyright to what you've written, unless you maintain that in your contract. So there are all different types of protectable work. You know, a novel, yes, you can copyright. You know, a basic information listing, a fact, it's not because it's not creative and original. Now, the copyright holder has a number of rights that they personally are able to have. For these things, copyright is automatic unless the creator says otherwise. From now on, because from the recent laws, anytime you create anything, you automatically have copyright. You don't have to register it with the Library of Congress. You don't even have to put a copyright statement on it. If you created something, it's copyrighted, unless you personally go out there and say, I'm giving this away for free. Unless you put it out there in the Creative Commons. So copyright holders, they're the only ones that have the right to make copies, to make modifications, to make derivative works, to perform it. So there's all these things that you cannot do without permission of the copyright holder. However, there are limitations to what the copyright holder is allowed to claim. The first sale, the transfer of legally acquired copies. This is an exemption to the copyright law that actually allows libraries to function. We're allowed to buy a book and allow people to borrow it. That falls under first sale. I can buy a book and give it away to somebody. That falls under first sale. The copyright holder can't say, well, no, they have to buy the book too. That's not a right that they have. Fair use is the big one. And I'll get into fair use later. But fair use is what allows us to use copyrighted materials in educational settings. That's why that comes up so much in a college setting. Photocopying for libraries and archives. Again, that kind of goes into the first sale doctrine. Those two are tied together. But there's different variations on that depending on the situation. And then, of course, there's other exemptions, and the list goes on and on and on. But it just depends on the situation. Each one of these exemptions is situational. It just depends on what is the item, What are you wanting to do with it? And each one has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Okay, fair use comes under Section 107 of the copyright law. Fair use can be used when other exemptions might not apply. And there's a lot that fair use does for us. The fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction and copies, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, is not an infringement of copyright. This is the exemption that allows professors to use materials in their courses. This is the exemption that allows us to do things like interlibrary loan and course research. Fair use is the defense in an infringement case, but it is also a user right. It is based on years and years of case law, and it's still kind of gray and murky a lot of times because you have to actually wait for somebody to get sued for infringement for the case to go to court for there to be clarification of the law. Fair use is an unauthorized but lawful use of copyright. You don't have to get permission from the copyright holder. You don't have to go out there and send them a letter and get permission from the publisher. You just document that, hey, this is what I'm doing, it's fair use, and you can go ahead and do it. You don't have to get permission. It is supposed to be technologically neutral, which means what you do in the classroom, you can do online. But that's technically. It actually does not fall out that way, and we'll talk about why later. So in reality, it's not technologically neutral, but it should be. It cannot be qualified or given black and white limitations. You can't say 100 pages, and that's what you're allowed to use. Because one book may be 1,000 pages, and so it's just a small amount of the book. Another book may be 120 pages, and you're using basically what amounts to the whole book. So again, it's a case-by-case determination. Examples of fair use include class handouts with short excerpts from the book, quoting for purposes of reporting the news or criticizing or commenting on a particular work, a class studying an artist using examples to critique or analyze the artist's work, making a collage for a school project, manipulating an image to learn Photoshop, etc. Determining whether your use is fair is sometimes where it's a little bit tricky because it's so gray. But overall, fair use, you don't have to seek permission, it's covered by the law, and it actually is based on what happens in case law in the courts. There are 4 factors to determining whether what you're doing is fair use. And if afterwards you would like, I have a link to a checklist that we use when we're doing fair use assessments for materials for course research. We have to do this for every item, and we have to maintain these records for 3 years, legally. The purpose, why are you using this? What is the need that you have for this? And generally for us in this particular setting, it's educational. It's educational purpose, it's not commercial. What kind of material? Are you using something like an encyclopedia that's factual, or are you using something that's highly creative, like somebody's composed piece, an orchestrated piece? How much of it are you actually using? Are you just using a little snippet, or are you trying to use the whole thing? That's going to make a difference. And how much are you going to actually affect the bottom line of the copyright holder? So these things, and it's not necessarily in a precise formula, you kind of weigh all these factors and you use the checklist, and you want to be more on the side of fair than not fair. And so it's kind of like a balancing act. You might be using it for educational purpose, and you're completely destroying their market for it. But that's okay, because those two balance each other out. So it just depends. And that's an awful answer sometimes to give people. It depends, but again, it's case by case. So a lot of times faculty will come to me and say, this is my particular issue, what can I do about it? And it's just going to depend. So maybe by using this article in our class, we're completely eroding any money the publisher is going to make off of it. But because it's non-commercial, educational use, and they're only using one chapter, it weighs more on the side of fair than of not fair. It generally only applies to productive uses, which take a portion of the work and create something new. Spontaneity falls under nature of the item. Spontaneity is important, especially when you apply it to faculty use of items in their classroom. You know, maybe I'm a faculty member And I've read a really good article in this journal that I just got in my mailbox, and I really want to share it with my students because it's pertinent to the lecture that we're having this week. So I make copies for all the students in my class. It's spontaneous, you know, it just came out last week. I didn't have time to really plan that into my syllabus. That's okay. However, when the same thing comes up next semester, that's not spontaneous, and I need to go through actually paying copyright royalties if I'm going to use that material again, unless I can again prove it's fair use under some other method. Substantiality is the other big, really big portion of this. How much of it are you using? And that's really hard when you get to things like artwork, because you don't generally use just a portion of the picture, you want to use the whole picture. So you're not just using a small bit. Textual works are a little bit easier because generally you can do excerpts, and that helps you to kind of keep that on the fair side. Yeah. The basic thing is to remember, try to be consistent with yourself. This is one reason that when we're doing things like, say, for course research, that we document each assessment that we make. So we can go back over time, one, and say that, hey, we did actually consider fair use for everything. We're not just willy-nilly using things. Two, that we're applying the same standard each time we do an assessment. I'm not saying it's okay to use, 80% of the work over here, but over here I'm saying you can only use 10. It's got to be even and consistent across everything. Students may use copyrighted work when producing for a specific course. But generally, faculty may include portions of copyrighted works when producing their own products for teaching, as long as they're not accessible to the public. Fair use of a copyrighted work and project is good for only 2 years, after which permission must be obtained. They say 2 years, but again, you have to take it into the account of the spontaneity factor. You might use it for 2 years, but every semester you use that spontaneity factor is lessened, which lessens how fair you're using it, and it will affect the overall balance of whether you use that material or not. I really believe in pushing the envelope. A lot of this is gray. There's no hard and fast. I've been at places where they say, for course, you can only use 10% hard and fast. That's it. I don't have a hard and fast number. I go for kind of a range-ish. If it's around 20%-ish, that's good. If it's 21%, I might say no, because it's 1% out of work time. And I think you really need to push the envelope a little bit, and also consider, what's reasonable, what's honestly there. And I think as long as you document it, you get sued, you got it. You've got your documents. You've shown that you've made an effort. And it's very interpretive. The whole thing is subjective. It's not an objective decision. So you could have all those documents, you have fair use, you take it to court, and they're like, sorry, it's not. But they could also say, yes, you're right, or you could have even done more, and you were more trained than we would have been. So everybody's opinion on something can be different. When you do this test, it can be different for everybody. You get the same scenario, you get 4 different people, and get 4 different decisions on whether it's fair or not fair. But as long as you're consistent, and you kind of have your own standards, and you're trying really hard to follow law and evaluate your use, you're doing it generally for educational purposes, you're going to be fine. But this issue is fair use is not part of the law. It is an argument for when you get sued. It is a defense. Fair use is a defense for when you are sued for infringement. It's not actually covered. Like a lot of people say, okay, fair use is this is what you're doing. You're using it as a defense for when you get sued for infringement. It doesn't actually protect you. You could have fair use, everything that you use for your course. You documented it, everything falls clearly under fair use. They can still sue you, you can still be found liable. All you can do is make your best case and try to do your best and document everything. A lot of times people will take fair use guidelines. A lot of guidelines, it's not untestable. You can try to compare it again, I'm not going to brothers. It's just more guidelines, That's not what it is. It's really just kind of easy. So a lot of people take it as like verbatim, the word of God. We must abide by it, and it's very strict. And it's not. It can be flexible. It can be gray. You should not be so anxious to be hard and fast with it. That's why I say push limits wherever you can. Library has our copyright guidelines published on our website. And it's important for faculty, whether they let us handle their fair use assessments or whether they do it for themselves. They know what the ramifications are going to be if their course is reviewed, and they give that some thought. Local copies for faculty comes up a lot with faculty. Kind of an example I just gave about, I got a regular article that goes to college at work that this week. It's kind of part of their use, sort of. But you have to consider the additional factors with here, brevity, spontaneity. It's a cumulative effect. When you're going from semester to semester to semester. And you can't use this, faculty cannot use this as a way to get around course tax. Course packs have to be done properly, following the university guidelines. They can't kind of do this ad hoc course pack every semester and say, well, it's very easy to kind of slide it in under the radar, because that will get you into trouble. And there's some things that just don't qualify at all. Software and consumables, you can't copy those at all. It doesn't matter whether your use is fair. Those items are off limits. So if you have a workbook and you have the workbook came with like your teacher edition, you don't want your students to have to buy the student edition of the workbook because it's the same pages. So you're like, well, I'll just copy these pages off and hand them out in class. That would get you into trouble fast because it's not allowed. It's consumable. You may not make copies of it, period. You must actually obtain permission and pay royalties. And sometimes those royalties can be very, very expensive. When you make multiple copies for class and use, the amount that you use has got to be minimal. Only what you actually need to make the point that you're trying to make in your lecture. The decision to use the work and the time of its use are so close in time as to not be reasonable to expect permission to use. That's where that spontaneity comes in. So, okay, this semester it just happened this week and I need to get it. But next semester I better be requesting permission. You cannot copy the items again a second time. And are you doing it for one section or are you doing it for multiple sections of your course? Because that's going to affect the market, that's going to affect the number of times you made the copies, and that's going to affect the number of instances for which you're claiming fair use. And when you do make those multiple copies, you must include the original copyright notice. If you do not, you're breaking the law. That notice has to be included. So we kind of talked a little bit about copyright. And what happens when people don't abide by copyright is they are infringing. And that's when you're using materials and you're not using them in a way that is legal or fair, and the publisher or the copyright holder can sue you. Licenses are contracts. Contractual agreements are outside of copyright law. For example, our electronic databases at the library. Those fall under contract law. So I may not be able to use those in the same way as, say, a print copy on the shelf, because contract law governs that. Now, we try to get contracts that allow for interlibrary loans, that allow for course services, the electronic and copyright. Your use is fall under contract to do it. With our operating material, publishers, or whatever, don't others that use the kinds of things under material signed as the publisher. That contract is done with that contract, right? I have to be held together. Of course, everything really good. There's nothing to know about it. I didn't know that they had to $100,000. So using materials without any of that, come on, it was not the digital game and this. There's a opinion still there and copies in here still counted. DVD circulation for copy. Requires even copyright there. So about something that if I'm doing a true commission, you can see something like small and a lot of rebates from this or it's every spread and that's not internet mean that the corporate have to get the other the big thing. So being a department fire library, right? First one liability anything computer. And then you do it. And this is the call when you're in your employee university and you start in place on them from times that that was stuff PR, DVR, on the CD. And even if it's fair use, you buy it in the legal are on that keep it produced or share purposes with. There's what so is what is like contracts. You may show last, share it with your office because that just section use and permission to talk comes down to that. You will not be able to get that. In fact, one of the makes it better saying, hey, they're not like you actually make create with the legal. Yeah. Came up with copyright. You got to go to make an name and actually it actually bizarre. That's what the offense versus supposed to be applicable structure in your I'm doing some particular there's like you're supposed to do the same thing that the work outside applies to basis but really for the output for a hard practice support and being that particular and so that's why I'm a log protected download server, which I'm just able to meet. With media to say each time here necessarily goes over the bias here I could watch it sometimes to be able to reveal the condition and dimensional permit or if they say of the movie fine so they will be able to show you that if all and it directs directly the condition on my so calls like I really the way and the amount We're not legally, but whoops. So it's a meaning portion limited to key part to say that only equal to a legal professionally. The teach you to apply to the whole reason is just you require up to office. You've been and now I do that. It's something that you want to use a pilot of the other. All this applies to university, but there's more things related. That things and make the rules and be able to already be able to decide to do schedule. Copy the visual. Institution for work to meet we're able to function under detention. You claim I don't teach Jack the version doing that. Isn't that for that? You know, for me, you should know the material. I know that they notice when you and it says the institutions or any technological institutions provide notice, they be protected. If they anyone teach technological lies material to prevent your technological copyright holders. And so they have to do it authenticity should have that all even to the form should have it. They don't have a couch on the street. Technological yes that we're no Jack until unless by their own proof that it's that way. But when you were sorry, you can't close it. You know, the big one. Cannot even in Jack C, you know, just protect regardless of where it is. Yep, my class and birds. But they think I didn't have any more Mr. Blackboard. Who knows that number who have had some are being royally. So when it's what you do after one I always say link. Just link your pocket, you make it close it. Or you can if they're running a shaky. The link is a liability in somebody else and a liability on. Asking about to tell it should be a sorry apply teach available and line side and CAJ only time things even if the courses are like with performance they're representative of weeks all day you know like students see the public it doesn't apply for class and display to private students to talk about action. So use anything which means kind of which is very murky and very confusing. Now, one thing that we can do to get around that is pay copyright royalties, which we do sometimes. Again, we do that on a case-by-case basis, and we evaluate it, and we see whether we should bother or not. And a lot of it depends on the price availability. You know, sometimes there's a 5-page article, and the publisher's like, well, for $20, you can use it all semester. Great. I know we'll have another publisher that says, you know, that 5-page article is going to cost you $300. Like, no, thank you. That's just ridiculous for 5 pages. So it just depends.
Yeah. So why would the thing to where we bought the copy? So if we already own the DVD, we're under that first sale thing. Why would they come check it out? If we're just saying it's a 2-hour in-library use or a 1-day checkout, why does that not apply? Why would you have
they can come check it out and show it in their face-to-face class. We could not put it on the online class of the same course.
Okay, but we could put a DVD on Course Reserve and say you have to come check it out.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not, we just can't put up the copy online.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's usually what the faculty want. They're like, it's an online course, I want it to be online.
Okay.
Like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I can put it on physical reserve. I can help you find it on YouTube. I can maybe see if there's some nefarious link it out on the web that, you know, I won't know about, but it's really murky, and so it's a very hard line because it seems like you should be able to do the same thing face to face and online, but you just can't.
If we are linking to your nefarious link or to YouTube, will that still violate the copyright? Would we be liable for that person who created
the person that has uploaded it and stored it on their server? You're linking, you're legal.
Okay.
Linking is always legal. You can just keep that part in your head, you're golden. So why should we care about whether we're breaking the law or not? Besides the fact that, you know, we like our job and don't want to get fired. It gets very expensive very fast. Up to an act. Think about this. You have a course. You have 10 items that you just stuck in there, and they're infringing. You have 30 students in your class. That's 300 acts of infringement. So they count each one of those individually, times up to $150,000. You can see how expensive that would be, and that's one course. If you think about our entire Blackboard system, if it got looked at, that could potentially be a lot of money and liability issues that this university would have to deal with. A lot of money. We're talking billions of dollars. The University of Georgia just went through this. They just got taken to court. And I think they had 75 things that ended up going to court and getting looked at. And most of those, they were cool. They were fair use, it was served, it was fine. But they got dinged on several, and it cost them millions of dollars for just a couple. So you can imagine that it would be potentially very scary. And willfulness is a factor, especially when you consider the fact that if you have these infringing things in your course and you have been told as a faculty member that you need to abide by copyright, and when you get sued, the university does not have to provide you legal representation because you did not follow the law nor the policies for your job. Only if you have documented yourself, you think it's fair use, if you've really gone to the mat to try to make sure that you're being legal, then the university is going to say, sure, the university attorney will be happy to go to court with you. Because they'll be suing the university too, and they'll be suing the individual faculty member. Now, how likely is it that they're going to come to us at UNCG? I wouldn't say highly likely, but you never know. They're really starting to get more and more into examining course management systems. These publishers are really starting to crack down on this type of thing. And a lot more places have been getting sued. So maybe it'll take them a while to get around to a smaller place like UNCG, but I wouldn't say that they never would, and we have gotten cease and desist orders here on various things. So it might not be an overall examination, but all it's going to take is one publisher and one item and a cease and desist order, and then a lawsuit. So not necessarily hugely likely, but it's possible. And as for me, I don't need to get sued. I don't have that kind of money sitting around waiting to pay off publishers for liability. And not just that, but we're faculty. We need to be teaching our students appropriate behavior. And if we're not modeling legal behavior, then we shouldn't be asking of our students. We should be the models for them. We should be showing them this is how you do it and this is how you do it correctly. So that when they do presentations and when they go to give speeches to people and they're going to do professional work after they graduate, that we've taught them how to do it properly. That's part of what our job is. And I'll make this available after I've got these wonderful extra resources for anybody that is interested. What we have on copyright, the UNCG copyright, and the system intellectual property laws. I like to also point out the fact that when it comes to copyright, it's not just a one-way street. It's not just what you're using, it's what you're creating and what you're producing. When you write an article and the publisher sends you the contract that says, I'm going to sign this to get my article published, make sure you're maintaining some of your own copyright. You wrote that, you created that. Don't sign away every right that you have. Maintain a right to put it in your institutional repository. Maintain a right to put it on your own webpage. Maintain the right to publish a preprint version of it, how you see fit. Maintain your own rights, in addition to respecting the rights of others. And there's some other ones. Especially with images, I like to point out, a lot of people don't know, if you go to a Google Advanced Search, there actually is a place, it's a drop-down menu in the Advanced Search, and you can tell it to give you things that are free for copyright. It'll say, you can use this, or it'll say, you can use this and change it. You can use this, change this, make derivative work, I don't care, do whatever you want with it. There's different levels of permission. So that when you're looking for data, especially using image searches on Google, that what you're getting back, you know it's okay for you to use. Try to be smart about that. And use those tools that will enable you to get to what you need without causing infringement. Flickr does it too. A lot of times you'll see a sign that says Creative Commons, and that'll help you find works that are copyright free to some extent. Some of them will even let you use it commercially. Some people are like, I don't even care if you make money off this. It's free for everybody. Take it. I also like to let faculty know that we have an institutional repository for your creative work. Most publishers will allow you to put your materials into your university's institutional repository. It also greatly increases the number of citations you receive. Highly, I think by 75% the first year my citations increase. And I put that in there because that's a thing to think about with copyright, maintaining your copyright when you publish material. So I have a couple areas. Faculty member records a segment on the evening news on her home VCR, like anybody has a VCR anymore, and the next day shows the recording to her class. And afterwards, she selects a 2-minute clip from the segment to burn onto DVD for future classroom presentations. Legal or not legal?
The entire newscast would get copyrighted.
Mm-hmm.
Might fall under fair use because you have spontaneity for the VCR, and then you're just using that one little segment that if you were to cite it and get proper citation.
And you can actually apply two-chat to this one because she's actually using it in her face-to-face session and then getting just a little bit to using her online. Now, what she does with that little bird piece is she might need to get permission for that after the first use. If she's putting it in her online class, she'd have to make sure it was not available for download. She'd have to do the fair use assessment for continued use. But the spontaneity piece does apply on this one. Okay, and a tip to save students money, a professor scans several chapters from an expensive textbook for a course and uploads a PDF file of the chapters to Blackboard for the students to read. This is the only material the students need for this particular textbook to complete the classroom assignment. Is it a fair use? David, what's people thought?
Well, I remember you saying linking is legal. Is that linking?
This is a one. And this one actually, it's hard to say. This is one of those iffy ones.
I would think if they could prove that it's for the purpose of avoiding the students that have to pay for the book.
But even if it impacts the publisher commercially, you have to look at the other factors. So that factor might be completely blown out of the water. But if the other three are fair, think about how much is being used. You have several chapters. Well, maybe the book has 30 chapters in it. You get 3. So you're looking at the book. Yes, that's what that's a little tiny bit. But you know, several chapters might be half the book, which would be too much. So this is one of those that's really iffy. You just can't really say for sure because you really need to know more. How many pages does the book have? Is it the heart of the book? Like the heart of the book kind of matters a lot too, especially if it's say fiction work. And the only part you copied is the part that tells you who did it, and it's a mystery book. You've just taken away the entire purpose of the rest of the book. So you might as well copy the whole thing because what you used was the critical part. So all of those kind of matter. An instructor wants to create a copy of a documentary and post it to her website to download. Yeah, there's a head shaking. That one's a blatant, like, yeah. Like, no, not even close. Not even close. An instructor scans excerpts from journals, textbooks, and other sources and creates PDF files of all the readings and then announces that they're available online at Blackboard. Okay, yeah, this is actually probably what is most frequently done in Blackboard on this campus.
Is that the linking thing?
And it is completely not legal. But that's not linking. That is, I've decided I have all these materials. I basically made an online course pack using Blackboard. And I can't do that without going through the course pack process and paying those copyright royalties. And this is where I'll often like to tell faculty, let us do it in course reserves. Because we'll do all the copyright processing for you. We'll find out whether we need to pay royalties. We'll find out whether it's fair use. We'll pay the royalties if we can. If you're a faculty member just putting it up on your own in Blackboard, you have to do all that work yourself. So I say, let us save you the effort. We're happy to do it for you. And then all you have to do is say, this is what I want. And we'll say, yes, 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 no. We can do this. And if we can't use something, we always work with faculty to try to find alternatives. Sometimes maybe, you know, we can't load up the film, but there's pieces of it and films on demand. Or maybe somebody loaded it up on YouTube, or it's just out there floating off on some random website somewhere. It also means that faculty have to do a really good job of maintaining their course. They can't just create their course and then leave it alone for 5 semesters. They need to go in there and review those links. Linking is legal, But you need to go in every so often, make sure your links are still working and have it become dead links, especially if it's on copyrighted material, because maybe you linked somewhere and they had it, it's great, because you didn't have to worry about copyright, but then they eventually did. And so now it's gone, and you have to come up with another source. But we will help faculty with that. We will work with faculty on that. And copyright continues to be heavily debated. It's being debated in the courts. It's being debated in groups interpreting the law. There's work groups. Canada just had a big thing on theirs. The United States is having continuing discussions about our copyright law. There was a big thing that just happened over in Europe regarding their copyright law. So it's not necessarily just American copyright law, but that is what's most applicable to us. But some of our sources come from these other countries, and their copyright laws apply. So it gets very murky and very fast. But we like to work with everybody, and we try to help faculty in whatever way we can. And we're happy to do the work for them and let them not have to worry about the headache of copyright. But all faculty should be aware of what their copyright parameters are and try to abide by fair use and to document and to keep their courses legal and keep themselves liability free. That's quick dirty on copyright. Are there any questions?
Are these producers required to put a notification on their material?
No. Nope, you just have to assume everything is copyright. And there is a problem with working on it. Sometimes you can't determine who the copyright owner is. And that's where you have to do your due diligence. Document, I tried this, I tried this, I tried this, I tried this. Then I went ahead and used it because all this stuff failed. But at least you've documented it. And like I said, those documents have to be maintained for 3 years. You have to maintain copyright documents for 3 years back. So all those fair use assessments. Now I do want to go back and show you.
Quick question, the course reserves. The faculty each semester have to put their course reserves back on file, right? Do they have to also make sure that the copyright rules, because they have.
Yes, and if they use it this semester, the chances are next semester we're having to pay royalties on it. And just to show you the checklist that we're using, I'll get it up.
If it's something the library owns, why would professors want to put it on CourseHero rather than just linking to the database?
That's what we tell them. The linking to the database is always legal.
I mean, you just take the permalink and take that out of your thing instead of putting a PDF up there.
Mm-hmm. That is what we try to do. Whenever possible, we link. So if they give us an article and they want it on reserve, we always check to see if we have it available in one of our databases. And if we do, then we link instead of making a copy.
Okay.
For some reason, that doesn't want to come up. They changed their URL. This is what the fair use checklist looks like. Let me make it a little smaller so the whole screen shows. So you've got your purpose, and you kind of check off what's applicable, and then your nature, and then your amount, and then your effect. And so this side opposes fair use, and this side favors fair use. So as long as you have more on the favor side than you do on the opposer side, you're good to go. So you could totally say on the effect that, oh yeah, we're really hurting their bottom line here, but all this stuff is good, so we're okay because we're doing it for a non-education, an educational, not-for-profit purpose, and we're only using a small amount. Now again, it doesn't keep you from being sued, but it shows that you made an effort and that you documented it and that you were really trying to make sure that you were abiding by the law. And this is the records that we have to maintain for every item we use for 3 years. And so the faculty members doing this on their own, this is the documentation they need to maintain. Otherwise, it's a legal free-for-all, and they're liable for whatever happens to be in their course.
Why is it 3 years? Is that the statute?
That's the law. See, it could be a potentially very expensive problem. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. And if you have any questions that come up after, let me know. And if you get any copyright questions from other faculty, shoot them my way. I do a lot of one-on-one consultations with faculty regarding copyright for their courses, or just general copyright questions that they may have. I've had them come to me about items that they were creating, items they wanted to use. So I kind of field it all. I've had student groups that come to me and ask me about using a video to share with their group. We actually had a public performance of a video on campus, and we were able to determine that the library had bought the public performance rights, so it was allowed to be used. The other video they wanted to use, we did not have those public performance rights, and so they had to come up with something else. So there's a lot of varied applications to copyright on our campus, so I kind of filled all of them.
Oh, I saw Dr. Liddy out there yesterday recording, because she got permission to record the president's thing. So she can then use that in her mass communication if she got permission.
Depends what the permission was for. That's generally my answer. My first answer whenever I get a copyright question is it depends, I need more information. I need to know who, what, where, when, my house. Then I can talk. Then I can kind of start judging. But if you don't have that information, you're, it's kind of like the professor wanted to use several chapters. Well, several chapters could be a little bit, or it could be a whole lot. Until I have more information about the item in question, I can't really say definitively. Thank you. Hopefully we can edit out any more in there. I sounded stupid. Everybody's here. I'm going to shoot on and do a speed one. Are all good to go?
Yeah.
And you'll send that to me?
I'll send you, I'll have James send it.
Okay, cool.
He'll send you the link.
Thanks. Can you just log that out when you're done?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, you should shut it down.
Okay, you shut it down?
Shut it down.
Okay.
I love copyright now. I got it.